Hello, I hope that you are doing great. In this video, basically what we are going to cover is the material in chapter 8 in the second part, in which basically what we are going to do is to connect the form that we have created in the previous video to the HTML file. And to do that connection between the Forms.py file and the HTML file, we are going to do that connection through the routes. Okay, then let's move on. Okay, we are here in Visual Studio, and the first thing that we have to do is to open a terminal and install all the packages that we are going to use. If you remember the last time, we installed Flash and we also installed Flash BTF, and you have all this in this requirements text file. If you want to do that, basically to install all the files, all the packages that we are going to need, you open the terminal, you activate the virtual environment, and you can type here pip install, and then basically you are going to install all the packages that we are going to need. I have already installed this, then basically all these requirements are satisfied. Then yeah, but this is a very efficient way to install all the packages that you need in the virtual environment. I want to clear this, and now I go to run the application because I would like to show you what we are going to do. If I open this link in a browser, I am here, and basically what we are going to do now is in the Carbon app, basically in this box here we are going to create a form, and we are going to do that step by step. Okay, then let's move on. I'm going to close this. We are going to need two files, the routes.py and the Carbon app HTML file. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is in the routes file we have to import the form that we have created. It's from the folder cap Carbon app forms. We have to import add record form, the form that we have created in the previous video. Okay. The second thing that we have to do is basically we have to allow in this route to allow the user to post information, and to do that we have to introduce this get and post in capital letters, and this will allow the user to post information in the web page. And now if I go here, form, add record form, the first thing that we have to do is to introduce this form in our route, and now we can start to use it. Then basically now I'm going to introduce a validation. Basically I'm going to trigger this form once that we click the submit button, and to do that is basically it's very easy. Form is validate on submit. If we validate this on submit, we are going to trigger the action in which basically we are going to redirect the user to another web page. It's going to be a return render template, and we are going to basically we are going to need this information here. I copy, I paste it there. We are going to redirect not to Carbon app but to Carbon app 2. We have the title is going to be Carbon calculator. We introduce here a legend. That is going to be app calculator. We are going to use this information later in the HTML file, and of course we need the form. We need to pass the form to the HTML file, and in the other file, in the other route or in the other render template, we also need the same information. Then I go here and I paste it there. We also need to pass the form here in order to don't have a mistake. Okay, these are all the changes that we need to introduce in the in the routes.py file. The second information that we need is to go to the Carbon app file. This file is in the templates, in the Carbon app folder, and in the in that folder, and then basically we have to introduce it. And as you remember, basically I'm going to open this again. Basically we need to introduce the elements in this small box here. Then that box is precisely here. Okay, in this Loren, instead of having this, we are going to have all the information that we want to disclose there. We are going to create the form. The first thing that we are going to introduce is the legend that we have introduced in the root, because we want to disclose some information there. Legend, and it's going to have a class border bottom MB4, and here basically what we are going to introduce is the legend, and we close this. That's all. Okay, the next thing that is the core of this part of the video is basically the form, and basically to create a form is very simple. We form method is going to be post, and action is going to be empty action. And here we are going to, inside this, we are going to create our form. The first thing that we need is, this is form CSRF token. This is basically to protect our form. We are going to introduce in the init file, we are going to introduce a number to protect this form. This is in the last video of this chapter, and this token is basically connected to that. It's basically to protect the form from people that could be interested in extract some information from our form. Then basically we're going to create a class, because inside this class we are going to create all the elements of this form. Then, as you remember, we type a dot section kilometer fuel CSS, and this is going to create a div, and inside this div we are going to create another div, another two div in fact. One is box. This is going to be for the labels, for the selection, or for the type of fuel, and we are going to create another box that is basically where we are going to introduce the number of kilometers. Okay, now we go step by step. Then the first thing that we are going to introduce in this form is basically we are going to allow the user to select the type of fuel, bus. This is form bus type, and we take the label, and we are going to have a class of this. Is going to be a class equal to form control label. Okay, this is going to be the label, and now we have to introduce the different choices that we have introduced in the previous video. Then is form bus type. This is going to be also a class. It's going to be form control large. Okay, we introduce these two forms, and now if I go to the web page and I refresh it, then now we have the legend. Here is the app calculator, and we have the bus DSL in which we can select the different types. The next information that we have to introduce is this box here, in which basically we are going to allow the user to introduce the number of kilometers. Okay. Then I go here again, and we go to the second box, and basically here what we are going to do is very simple. It's basically the same logic, but now the labels and everything is slightly different. Is form bus, and this is kilometers label, and here again we are going to create a class. It's going to be form control label. This is the first thing, and the second thing is we are going to allow the user to introduce the number of kilometers. But given that we don't want to allow the users to introduce anything, because you cannot introduce, for example, letters, or you cannot introduce a number that is not a float number. And then basically we are going to introduce some validators to verify that the user is introducing the right information, and in the case that the user is not introducing the right information, we disclose some information to the user to tell, okay, you have to introduce this particular thing. Okay, and this is what we are going to do is basically by using an if statement in Jinja, and we are going to disclose that information. Is form bus kilometers errors. We are going to have to introduce here the right indentation. Form bus kilometers. Again, we have a class here. Form control LG is invalid, because we want that this information is in red, invalid. Okay. And now I go down, and basically we're going to create a div in which we are going to introduce all the errors message. Then basically we have to create a div with a class that is invalid feedback, and inside this div basically we are going to type all the errors that we have for that particular field. Error in form bus kilometers errors, and we disclose all the errors inside a span. Here basically we type all the error, each single error, and then we close the for loop. Okay, and then we go outside the div, and then we introduce an else statement. And in this case, we basically have to introduce the same. We have to take the information from the form, but in this case it's not invalid. Then we erase this is invalid. We have to place here the right indentation, and then we have to close the entire loop. And if. Okay, this is basically all the information that we need to introduce here. We also need to introduce the submit button, but I'm going to verify that this is introduced correctly. Then I go to the web page, I refresh it. Okay, and now this works. Now I can introduce this, but given that I don't have the push button, the submit button, I cannot trigger the action that is inside the if statement in our route. Then basically to conclude this, we have to come back to the web page, and now inside the form, basically what we have to create is a submit button. Then I go to minimize this. Okay, I go here, and then basically in the very bottom we have to introduce the submit button, and this will conclude the form. And then basically here what we have to introduce, we are going to create a div with a class of form group, and inside this class we are going to create the submit button. This is form submit. We are going to have a class it's a bootstrap class, btn primary and btn large margin of 2. Okay, and also we are going to have some style. I have created this myself, background color, to have a nice form, nice colors, and this is 0, 0. Okay, I have it here, background color. Okay, I need to introduce this, and this will be correct. Now but this will be inside here. Okay, now we save it, then I go again to my web page, I refresh it, and now we have here the submit button. Then we imagine that now you introduce a number later. If I click in submit, then it's telling me that it's not valid value, and then we have some feedback. Then if I introduce here, if I don't introduce anything, it's going to tell me please fill this, and if I introduce a number, it's not going to happen anything because I need to introduce the other elements here, and this is precisely what I'm going to do in the last part of this video. And I'm not going to type everything because this requires a lot of time. Then I ask you to go to the GitHub account, and you have to go to the final in chapter 8 final, and go to the Carbon app, and you have to copy this element. Then you go to the Carbon app, Control A to select everything, you erase everything, and now you paste it. We save that information, we save this, and then we refresh the web page. I refresh this, and now basically what we have here is we have to select this type of things, and now we have to introduce here the kilometers. Now when we click in the submit button, we are redirected to this Carbon app, and this is a good signal in the sense that okay, we have introduced all the information, and you are redirected here. And if you copy the code from the GitHub account, if I go here to the Carbon app and I go to the Carbon app 2, and I copy this, copy raw file, and I go to the file to my project in Visual Studio, and I open Carbon app HTML2, and then I erase this and I paste this information and I save it. If I refresh now this web page, I will be redirected exactly to this, that is the Carbon app 2, in which basically we have the type of fuel, the kilometers, and in the next chapter what we are going to do is to work out the carbon emissions, and then this is the methodology that we are going to use. Okay, basically in this video what we have done is to analyze how to connect the form that we have created with the HTML file, and to do that basically what we have done is to use the routes, and then basically we have introduced some changes in the routes file and some changes in the HTML file in such a way that we can communicate the form with the HTML, and we allow the user to introduce some information about the type of fuel and the number of kilometers, and we also have introduced some code in the HTML file to detect if the user is not introducing the right information in that form. Okay, I hope that you have enjoyed, and see you in the next video.